So today we are going to be talking about motivation and negative thought spirals. I say a lot that motivation is not real because when it comes to reaching our goals, it comes down to discipline, right? Which is self-force because we're not always going to be motivated. Honestly, motivation is going to be on the latter end. Most days you just have to get up and just, make your ass move and reach your goals, right? However, and this is like me being a very humble and unbiased person because there's actually a science to motivation, right? Neurologically, cognitively, there's different types of motivation. And I feel like identifying the exact kinds can make you a little bit more consistent with reaching your goals because some of you are going to hear some of these explanations and be like, okay, wait, that's me versus that's not me. There's different types, and you're going to see what I mean when I get into it. But it kind of allows you to understand yourself better, right? And healing and growth and personal development is all understanding ourselves better, right? That's self-awareness. You can't get anywhere without self-awareness. So this is kind of what it's going to do. And then I will also, go over thought spirals and such. If you guys have never been on any of my calls before, some of this might seem a little bit dense, but I'm gonna like briefly explain some of my previous calls towards the middle of this presentation. Okay, let's jump in. So motivation, is it real? Like I guys just told you, most days I think it's a crock of shit, right? You have to get up and go just because you have goals that you have to reach, whether that's career goals, finance goals, health goals, family goals, relationship goals. You have to get up and force yourself to choose the highest version of you. And that is not always coming from motivation. It's going to come from discipline. However, understanding how you're motivated and understanding how goals really work on a science-based level is going to actually allow some more aha moments to come into your head where you're like, oh, okay, well, now I can move towards this goal just a little bit more efficiently because now I understand myself more internally. That is the only point of this today. Okay. So let's jump in. Okay. So let's just go over the basic principles first so that everything is more cohesive in this presentation. So a motive itself is an impulse that causes a person to act, right? That's where the word motivation comes from. Okay. So motivation is an internal process. This is why I always say it's a little bit bullshit because it can't directly be observed, right? But it's an internal process that makes a person move towards a goal. Okay. Like I said, like intelligence, it cannot be directly observed. And that is where discipline comes into play. Now, motivation is never a constant, right? I'm going to repeat this probably 20 fucking times on this presentation so that you drill it into your head because the amount of times I've heard someone say, and not even just in, the mindset space, right? Because I was a fitness coach for about 8 years. I hear it with fitness clients all the time. Well, I'm not motivated enough. What should I do when motivation is low? Guys, you got to tap in here. That's how we pull ourselves together, right? We want to reach our goals. Okay. It's pretty fleeting. And that's why I'm going to repeat myself a lot. However, motivation can be intrinsic, extrinsic, or both. Okay. So intrinsic motivation is the motivation to act for the sake of the activity itself, right? It's like because you enjoy it. That's intrinsic motivation. For example, for me, mindset and mental health coaching, that's an intrinsic motivation for me. It just lights me up. I don't really have to force myself to show up for any of this shit, which is actually nice. So, for example, right? Another example. People have intrinsic motivation to write poetry if they do it simply because they enjoy it, right? It's a hobby, but it's also a passion. And so this is what's called intrinsic motivation. Now, on the flip side, extrinsic motivation, right? Is the motivation to act for external rewards. This is when shit gets really messy, right? We're only doing something for a specific outcome that has nothing to do with what's going on inside of us. So, for example, let's say that writer is now writing because they want a brand deal or they want to make a lot of money or they want to be famous. Now it's not going to be as enjoyable, right? Because we've put a different outcome attached to it and it's not coming from here. So just understand, like, what I would challenge you guys to do really quickly is you can do it right now, take a few seconds and think about it. In certain areas of your life where you have goals for yourself right now, whether that is, career-wise, finance-wise, or since we're here, health and fitness-wise, are you intrinsically motivated or are you extrinsically motivated? This is key for you to understand because if you're extrinsically motivated in one of these areas and you're only doing it because I want to be hot or I want to be rich, right? These are not going to motivate you. And that is where discipline comes in. Or it's an opportunity to reevaluate, like, do I need to shift this goal? Do I need maybe a different goal altogether, which is totally fine. But getting clear on that and understanding that when it's extrinsic motivation, there's no longevity in that. Eventually, you're going to wake up one day and be like, fuck this, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Now, there's also different levels of motivation. First, we got basic levels, and then we have the ones that are, again, are more extrinsic, okay? So most basic level of motivation is our physiological needs, right? When you're hungry, when you're thirsty, you know, craving safety, craving security. Honestly, even sex falls in this category because it's just an innate desire. We're fucking primates, okay? We crave that stuff, okay? And then if we go a little bit further, second level of motivation is the need for social interacting, right? Or the need to belong. This kind of comes into play in our relationships, in our communities, even in our work. Like, for example, like what me and Mike and, you know, other people I work with do, like we work with communities, right? If there was no community for us personally, because we're very connection driven, it wouldn't be as fun for us. We're very community driven, right? So the second level of motivation is very intrinsic to us. You see what I mean? So like just let the pieces kind of fall together where they make sense for you. And then also as the second level of motivation can also come in like the, you know, interpersonal relationships, like romantic relationships, partnerships, the need to want to have a partner, right? Like I don't care what anyone says, the whole, oh, stay single as long as you can. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can work on yourself and all that, but we are human beings. We're meant to be with other people. We're meant to co-regulate, to co-create, to intertwine. We're meant to have connection, okay? As long as it's healthy and not toxic. Let me make that perfectly clear. Third level of motivation, okay? The needs for self-esteem. So this includes like the need to, you want respect from other people, but more importantly, yourself. Let's say, for example, you're in a not so great relationship with a family member, right? Let's say it's a little bit unhealthy, it's a little bit toxic. Let's say they're constantly overriding your boundaries. You've expressed them several times, but they don't listen to your boundaries. You know, they're condescending, they walk over you. This is where that third level of motivation is very, very fucking key, right? Because when you have that third level of motivation honed in, you're not going to tolerate this because you love yourself enough and you respect yourself enough to walk away from that situation. A lot of you guys need third level motivation, okay? It will change your whole fucking life, I promise you. And then the fourth level of motivation is just the need for self-actualization or realizing one's full potential. This typically comes in the areas of, you know, your career or education or knowledge, obviously like finances and stuff like that. So people who are more stagnant and complacent, like people who, I believe that every type of job out here on the market is necessary to make this economy work. So hear me when I'm saying this, okay? I'm not shaming anyone. But for the people that are more, you know, comfortable just staying at regular 9 to 5, and that's just what they want to do because it's more comfortable for them, good for you, right? But they might not be tapping into that fourth level of motivation, which is okay. Not everyone has it, because if everyone did have it, everyone in the world would be super fit and rich. That's just a fact. Okay, so not everyone has fourth level motivation, and that is okay. Recognize if you have it though, because if you're in this community, 9 times out of 10, you have some fourth level motivation. Because getting to that next level as far as like your physique, guys, that takes so much mental power and discipline. So I would have to say that all of you are, you know, at least touching the fourth level of motivation because you're in this community. Notice, where am I at? Where am I at as far as levels of motivation? Obviously, we're all around first and second. That's pretty standard. Notice, am I at third level motivation? Am I upholding my own boundaries? Am I respecting myself in my relationship? Because if you're not, that's something to look at, right? Evaluate yourself. Do an audit of your relationships. 10 out of 10 recommend. Some more science on motivation. Now, an achievement motive is a smidge different, okay? An achievement motive is an impulse to master challenges and reach a high standard of excellence. That's like a level above what that fourth level of motivation is, right? This is like fourth level on steroids, essentially. Like you'll see entrepreneurs and CEOs in this type of role with this type of motive, essentially. So personality and situational factors influence achievement motivation, including influences in the youth. All right, I'm going to say that again. Both personality and situational factors influence achievement motivation, including influences in the youth, specifically before you turn into a grown adult, childhood trauma. Well, I talk about it so damn much. Genetics play a huge part in this, and mental health, relationships, and then just media influence. Shit you see on Instagram, stuff you see on the news. These all are huge factors in having an achievement motive, right? So this is literally why high achievement is easier for some people than others. I'm sure you've all, if you're not, let's say you're not that super duper duper high achiever, I'm sure you know someone that is like that, and we maybe compare ourselves. And to be honest with you, I feel like everyone compares themselves in some capacity. Like you could be a millionaire and potentially compare yourself. I've seen that, like face to face. So notice that. This does not invalidate your abilities to achieve. It just means that you might have to push a little bit harder, right? And some examples of this could be, let's say in your childhood, for example, your parents never really acknowledged you much. They never acknowledged success or progress. Like, let's say you got, A's and B's most of the time, and it was just like you know, or let's say you did really well in sports, and it was like you know what I mean? So that's why I said this is why high achievers, can it looks like it's easy for them. You ever like seen someone? I know plenty of people. I don't know about you guys. You ever seen someone in life that you've observed? Maybe you know them personally or not, and you're like, damn, they're always just like going for the next level, right? Like, oh my God, they just made 10K a month, 20K a month, 30K a month, 40K a month. Oh my God, they just got married. Oh my God, they just bought a house. This is someone who has an achievement motive, right? And it's all rooted from childhood experiences, genetics, relationships, media, and all the other influences that we experience in life. So high achievement motivation tends to lead to particular personality features, okay? These include persistence, ability to delay gratification, okay? And competitiveness. Guys, we have to really stop being so obsessed with instant gratification. Nothing comes from instant gratification, like not at all. I think yeah, Mike and I were actually talking to a client about this not too long ago, right? You have to take that gratification and just put it on the back burner. That's not why we do things. If you want it fast, you're pushing it further and further away from you, right? It's almost like when we want something to come to us quickly and we're like, I don't have it yet. Like, what's going on? Like, what am I doing wrong? Or we're blaming, external circumstances. Like, why can't I have this thing right now? All you're doing energetically is pushing that thing further away from you. The more you obsess over point B, the longer it's going to take you to get to point B, right? Notice that we all do it in some area of our lives. I know I do it sometimes. I am not perfect. And the more you can be okay with delayed gratification, honestly, the more successful you will become because you don't care when you get to it. You just want to do it. Okay. That kind of ties into intrinsic motivation as well. Right. So going over these a little bit deeper. Persistence. Can't get anywhere without persistence, guys. Nothing literally comes easy. Anything that's worth having is never going to come easy to you. So this is why you need to have persistence. Okay. High achievers tend to be very persistent and work hard to attain goals and set themselves. Very simple, right? Persistence, perseverance, tenacity, you need all of these things to achieve at a high level because as the goals get bigger and bigger, the challenges also are going to get bigger and bigger. The obstacles are going to grow as your goals grow. And when that happens, you have to take gratification and put it on the back burner and just say, I'm showing up because I just want to be better. And I know I'm going to get there eventually. Second, ability to delay gratification. Like I just said, high achievers tend to have a greater ability to delay gratification. To gratifying their impulses in short term in order to reach long-term goals. Okay. This is a big one in fitness, dude. I swear to God, it's like, oh my God, it's only been 3 months. I'm sorry, it's been 3 months and I've only lost 7 pounds. It's like, that's great. Like, what the fuck did you expect? Like you see all the garbage out there as far as like, fitness marketing. That's like lose 30 pounds in 90 days. It's like, yeah, if you just like fuck up your body and your hormones and don't eat it all. If you want something that's great and beautiful and worth having and it's going to be sustainable, you have to be able to delay your gratification. Okay. And then everything will come to you. And then third thing, competitiveness. High achievers tend to select careers that give them opportunities to compete with other people. This aspect, I feel like, isn't something you'll find in every single person. Me personally, I'm not this way. I want to see everyone win. I have no desire to outbeat someone. It's just not who I am. I feel like everyone deserves their own success. But there are some people who are driven just by beating other people. I personally think it's a little toxic, but this is not about my opinion. Okay, situational factors. Okay, we're going to make all this make a little bit more sense to you. And this is where it gets a little bit more specific to each person in their own situation. Okay. Some situational factors also affect achievement motivation, which is why we're going over it. Okay. They include the expectation of success, incentives, control, and opportunity. So as far as expectation of success, this is where people are much more likely to have a high expectation of success, right? If they have a feeling of self-efficacy or confidence in their own ability to meet challenges effectively. So this is why some people will just be so sure and confident of themselves, right? So I feel this way about helping other people with mindset and mental health and healing. I feel that way, right? And it's not, this is very different from being cocky or arrogant. This is just a no, I know I was built for this. This is what I was made for. Okay. So there's a big difference there. Having good role models and getting constructive feedback and encouragement also helps to build self-efficacy. Not a lot of us had this in our childhood, right? If you had healthy parents, go you. I'm so happy for you. But unfortunately, not all of us had this in our childhood, right? So instead of getting, praise and encouragement or positive and constructive feedback in order to be better, some of us were only shamed or criticized in a negative way or put down or honestly probably even ignored. And so that's why expectation of success can really vary from person to person. And it can be built in different ways, right? Sometimes those things like that lack of acknowledgement and criticism, positive criticism and encouragement, that can actually drive some people. For example, I'm that way. I didn't get any of that in my youth, but now my expectation of success is extremely fucking high. Okay. Just notice how it affects you. All of this is observation. Everything I'm telling you is self-awareness, so that you can pinpoint exactly what type of person you are, how you are motivated, so that you can reach your goals more effectively. I just need you to notice everything about yourself in relation to what I'm saying. Okay? So, like I said, if we loop this back to childhood trauma and past experiences, it clearly explains why two different people can have completely different levels of motivation and discipline, right? Depending on their environment and influences. Right. So let's say there's two different people and they both grew up very differently. One had a very supportive family, a very emotionally intelligent mom and dad, right? They had a lot of support. And then you have someone else who grew up and they didn't have any of that. Like let's say if they grew up kind of rough, right? They're going to have two totally different experiences and they're going to have two very different levels of motivation. Incentives. Incentives reward people for their competence and motivate them to achieve, right? However, incentives can also decrease people's intrinsic motivation. You know what I mean? So if it's an intrinsic motivation and you originally love it, but then there comes an incentive tied to it, like later in life, it's going to change how you view it, if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, please drop it in the chat. Okay. So like I said, it can decrease people's intrinsic motivation if people focus on getting incentives rather than doing the task for their own sake, for their own joy. I think honestly, this kind of it was a two-part as for my fitness business, but this started to happen with my fitness business. I got into it originally just because I loved it. It was a part of who I was. I loved helping people with it. And then money got tied to it. And I was like, ugh, I don't really like this anymore. So just notice how it affects you because everyone's very different. People tend to have more motivation to achieve if they feel they have control over some aspects of their work. Basically, when you are you're the head honcho of what you do or the company, right? Because you have control over everything around you, over everything beneath you, and how the business is going to run and look. You'll see that a lot in people, like I said, CEO roles and entrepreneurs. And then the last one's opportunity. So people are motivated to achieve only when they have the opportunity to achieve. This is a little bit different. If they don't see an open door in front of them, they're just like, oh, well, fuck it. Guess I can't do it. Opportunity is really fickle in that way, depending on the person behind it. This in part can explain why some people stay stuck based on circumstances. Guys, I can't tell you how many people I know, family members, not friends, associates. Just for background, I grew up pretty poor. I grew up in the ghetto of Michigan. And so I know so many people that are in the exact same spot now as they were 10 years ago. And it's because, well, there's no open door of opportunity right here in front of me. So I'm just not even going to try. Right? That's when we stay stuck and we can't reach our fullest potential. So like I said, if you grew up with little to no opportunity in front of you, you will have less drive to achieve higher. And again, this is not every person. Okay, this is very case by case, which is why I'm explaining it to you guys so you can understand where you fall. Okay, clarity for the sake of clarity. All right, now, power of goals. This ties in directly to goal setting because if you don't goal set the right way, guys, you're not going to reach your fucking goals. I had to break it to you. Saying, oh, I want to be successful is not a goal, right? Saying, I want to make six figures is not a goal. You have to be very clear and specific the more vague you are, the less likely you're going to reach that goal. This is science, and I can also attest to this from personal experience. Okay, so let's help you guys out because clearly everyone in here has at least has a fitness goal they want to reach, right? So please pay attention. Goals are most likely to increase motivation to achieve if they are specific, challenging, but achievable and positive. They have to be all of those. They cannot be one or the other. Specific, challenging, but achievable and positive. Okay? Goals should be specific. The more specific the goal, the more effective they are as motivators. Okay? Goals can be very motivating, but they have to be specific. So like Mike has you guys doing vision boards and stuff. I've been doing vision boards for about 5-6 years now. The more specific I ever am on a vision board, the more likely I am to achieve it. Right? So don't just say, oh, I want to love myself more this year. How? I want to put in better boundaries. I want to keep the promises I make to myself. I want to release any toxic relationships. That's how you love yourself. Be more specific, and then you're actually going to reach the goal. Another example is, let's say if Steve is trying to get all his reading done for a final exam, a specific goal, such as I will finish 1 chapter each week, is 10 times more effective than I'll make sure I'm ready for my final. That's so vague. How are you going to make sure you're ready for your final? Number 2, goals should be challenging but achievable. If they're not challenging, dude, you're less likely to be motivated to even do it, right? Like there's something innate about a challenge to us. I don't mean unachievable. That's why it's very clear here. It says challenging but achievable. So goals have to be difficult enough to be challenging but easy enough to be reachable. An example, if Kelly has been struggling to maintain a C average in a class all semester, a goal such as I will make a B on the final exam will be 10 times more motivational versus I'll get an A in the class. How are you going to get an A in the class? You see my point? You have to be very clear or you're not going to get there. And then third, goals should be positive. I think this is pretty obvious, but we'll go over it anyways. It's better for people to frame goals in terms of what they will do rather than in terms of what they will not do. Okay? One of the laws of the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, right? It does not process negation. So if you're constantly saying, I don't want to be poor, I don't want to be poor, I don't want to be poor, what the hell do you think you're going to be? The only thing you're thinking about is poor. Energetics, this is a scientific description, is it does not pick up negation. This is why you have to be very careful with what you say to yourself. Watch what you say out loud. Instead of saying, I don't want to be broke, say, abundance is my birthright. It is. Being wealthy is my birthright. It sure the fuck is. Everyone on this planet can be wealthy if they wanted to. Watch your words. Another example, a goal such as I will study for an hour every weekday evening is likely to be much more effective versus I will not go out on a weekday evening. You see my point? It's like, I will not go out. Okay, so what are you going to do instead? Make sure it is not negative. All of these have to be positive. UFO. Okay, now we're going to talk about the thing that I actually wanted to talk about. How to break negative thought patterns to achieve goals. Okay, guys. So this is kind of where watching, if this, like I said, if this is your very first call of mine as you popped on, I would, Mike has all of my calls on his YouTube channel. I would go back to the very first, I would go back to the very first call I did in this community and watch it. Because I do not have time today to explain in depth neuroscience and metacognition. I just don't have the time. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over it, and then we're going to continue. Okay, review. So you have the conscious mind and you have the subconscious mind. Okay, the subconscious mind is in control 95% of the time. So all of the thoughts back here, your belief systems about yourself and the world, like the ones that say, oh, the world's not fair, life isn't fair, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not fit enough, that you don't really notice all day long, plot twist. They're running your life 24/7, 365. You're only conscious of this 5% of the time until you decide to change that. You can change the percentage, but you have to become aware and conscious enough to do so. This is why we talk about meditation and journaling so fucking much, guys. It literally changes lives. It literally cures depression and anxiety, and it can reprogram your mind so that you no longer believe I'm a piece of shit, I'm never going to amount to anything. And instead you believe I'm abundant. I can reach any goal I set my mind to. I am a bad bitch. I am extremely smart. Whatever you want to believe about yourself, you can reprogram that, but you have to alter this 5 to 95%. You can only do that by becoming aware of your thoughts. You can only become aware of your thoughts by meditation, journaling, other modalities I won't get into right now, but you have to go inside. Observing your immediate family, surroundings, and media was a direct mental influence as to why you are the way you are right now. I'm going to try my best to not go balls deep into theta phase because it's my favorite thing to talk about. However, when you were a child, from the time you popped out the womb, you're about 17, 18 years old, but more specifically, birth until about 7 to 8 years old, you did not have the neurological capacity to push out bad information. So if you were 6 years old and someone said, hey, you're a piece of shit, you're never going to amount to anything, you're ugly, you're fat, which unfortunately a lot of us have experienced in our childhood, that's now your belief system. You think it's gold now. This is Bible. I cannot ignore this information because you don't have the capacity to put out bad information. This is where a bulk of our beliefs about ourselves and others comes from. Because once you hit about 10 years old, you go into what's called alpha phase. Now, the brightest in alpha phase, but now you have the capacity to say, no, I don't agree with that. Okay. But before that, you don't. And this is why it's so impertinent to watch our mouths around little kids. It's not just about swearing. You have to watch what you say to them because their brains are sponges, just as yours was when you were that young. That is why you have these belief systems present day. So your current brain, it holds all of your old memories around trauma. So all the trauma, by the way, if you're new here, everyone has trauma. Welcome. Whether it's little t trauma or big T trauma, everyone has it. And it's why you act the way you do. It's why you react to things the way you do. It's why you speak the way you do. It's why you have the triggers you do. Okay? Because everyone has trauma in some capacity, right? We call it trauma, not to make it sound negative, because it literally affects the brain chemistry. Trauma, past experiences that create a visceral reaction within you, it alters your brain chemistry. So notice, did anything happen to you in your childhood? If you think back to when you're between like 6 and 10 years old, did you have any experiences that could have altered the way you view yourself? Or maybe you witnessed other people, that was your trauma. For example, let's say that as a kid, you watched your mom's relationship with food, right? So let's say she would always make dinner for you and your siblings and your dad. And let's say she made you guys spaghetti and garlic bread or some shit. And she's at the kitchen counter eating grilled chicken and a salad. And you're like, Mom, why aren't you eating with us? And she's like, oh, I can't eat that, honey. And you're like, why? And she's like, well, it'll make me fat. And you're like, why? And she's like, well, it's just not good for me, right? So now, just because you view that, right? Like mom has no idea what she just did. She wasn't trying to traumatize your poor little brain, but it's just perception, right? We can't push out the false information. So now you have a bad relationship with food. Maybe you either undereat or overeat, right? Maybe you end up purging eventually when you get older, right? This is what makes up our belief system. So just notice if anything like that has happened to you in your youth, because it has in some capacity, regardless of what it pertains to. Okay, it could be about food, it could be about your body, it could be about your relationships, it could be about your knowledge level, it could be about your capabilities, right? Like you'll never amount to anything, you're not smart enough. Just notice what happened to you in your childhood. So if it happened to you when you were 2-year-old or 10-year-old, doesn't matter. Your brain has all of those memories, and more specifically, it has all of the emotions tied to those memories. Okay, so let's say you were a kid, you witnessed your mom and dad fighting, right? Let's say maybe it got physical, okay? So you witnessed that. So now present day, let's say you're watching a movie and there's domestic violence involved, you get a visceral reaction. Maybe your palms get sweaty, maybe your heart races, maybe you just get angry and you're like, you change it, you can't watch it anymore. That's a visceral reaction because your brain holds all of your memories and the emotions tied to those memories from your entire life. The brain is really cool, guys. Okay? So the amygdala is involved. This is where you process your emotions. The prefrontal cortex up here is involved. That's where the short-term memory is. And then the last one is your hippocampus. That's where your long-term memory is. And so obviously as time goes on, those memories from your prefrontal cortex are going to transfer to the hippocampus. And that's why we have trauma, because the brain is really fucking good at doing its job. So what's funny is these same parts of the brain also trigger and engage in new creation in the 3D, right? Specifically, the prefrontal cortex is designed to create new realities. Guys, this is where you hear the word manifestation come into play. Manifestation is not some woo-woo shit, guys. Manifestation is actually science. right? Our brains are built to create new realities. We are energy. Everything outside of us is energy. If we focus on what we want enough, you will eventually draw it into your reality. Your brain is made to do that thing. This is a bit more of a review if you haven't been on my calls before. So there's two versions of you. Believe it or not, there's actually a lot more than that. But let's just talk about two versions of you for the sake of time. There is your lower self / old self, okay? That's the one that is stuck in the not so great habits. That's the one that when your friend's like, hey, let's go out for the third time this weekend and get fucked up. The one that says yes, that's your old self. The one that kind of holds you back a little bit, right? The one that can be lazy. The one that doesn't like to keep promises to yourself. The one that falters a lot, that's your old self. Your higher self is the version of you that has reached all of your goals, right? That's the one that has the body you want, the money you want, the relationship you want, the career you want. That's your highest self. What we have to recognize is that both versions of you want the exact same thing. Your lower self thinks it's keeping you safe, right? To our lower self, our ego, our old self, these are all interchangeable terms. Let's just use ego for the sake of this. Your ego thinks that it's keeping you safe by keeping you trapped in things that are familiar. So to the ego, familiar and safe are the same thing. We have to show ego that this is not true, because familiar habits can really fuck you up. I used to drink a fuck ton in my early 20s. It was disgusting. I'm talking guys getting shit faced on Hennessy every single weekend, right? And I had to get to a point where I said, this is my lower self. This is holding me back. My highest self doesn't get shit faced every weekend, right? But because it was familiar, I stayed there for years. And then I had to tap myself out of it because I knew what I wanted. And what I wanted was not to be a drunk every single weekend. But that was familiar. So my brain thought it was safe. You have to show your brain that the other thing you want, the success, the happiness, the money, that's safe too. It's just not familiar because we haven't done it enough times yet. Same thing with fitness, right? People will struggle with the concept of motivation when it comes to fitness because they're like, oh, well, this is just too hard. Like, I haven't done this before, blah, 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 blah. How do you think you get good at something, right? You get good at something by constantly bringing it into your reality, by constantly showing up. And the more you do that, the more you will show your lower self, this is safe. This is productive. We want the same thing. You guys both want safety and security. You just got to bridge the gap. But that's a whole nother call right there. When we are kind of addicted to our lower self and, the not so great habits that tell us to skip our workouts, not hit our meals, to not, do our mental health exercises every day, to not put in boundaries, right? Like the things that are going to help us succeed in life. When we don't want to do those, or we're like, that sounds like a lot. This is just you being addicted to a stress response, dude. Right? Because these old habits, subconsciously, these old habits are going to stress you the fuck out. You know this. They're not good for you. Okay? But you become looped in them because our brains and our bodies physiologically become addicted to stress response, right? So most people, unfortunately, live in a state of fight or flight in your nervous system. So essentially, you're just chronically stressed out. And most people won't break out of that because they're addicted to the stress. It releases all these chemicals, right? It triggers neurotransmitters in the brain, and it's almost like a drug. There's this book, I think I put it at the end of the slideshow. It's called Existential Kink. Go buy it, go read it. It's not what you think. It's going to make all this make sense. Okay? The thing that you're like, oh my God, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be overweight anymore. I don't want to be unhealthy. I don't want to be poor. You secretly want it. That's a conversation for another day. Go read Existential Kink. This is why we stay chained to our not so great reality, because we refuse to break out of the habits, right? We refuse to stop tapping into the stress response. It takes a little bit more effort to choose the positive route. We all know this. If it didn't take more effort, everyone would be healthy and rich. Just remember, those limiting beliefs you have about yourself right now, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm dumb, I'm not worthy, all those ridiculous thoughts, those thoughts took us back to the stress response. And then we're just staying in that loop. You have to break out of it or you don't get to the point B. Like I said, guys, if that last slide didn't make a ton of sense to you, it's because you really have to. I'm not trying to encourage you to watch my shit. I do not care. You have to go rewatch the very first video that I posted. Those last two slides, I did an entire presentation on that, around poor habits, the brain, manifesting your better realities. So please go watch the first call I did. And Mike, please cuss people out about it over the next week. Okay. So these are some tools that you guys need to be using. Some of you are going to look at this list and be like, oh yeah, Ash has been telling me to do this for the last 3 months. Yeah, I have, because it's powerful and it's potent and it can literally change your life. Meditation. I don't want to hear anyone say, I don't know how to meditate. That is the dumbest excuse in the world. That's like saying, I don't know how to exercise. No one said you had to be perfect at it. We said you just have to do it. If you want to meditate, you want to get into it, but you're not sure how, here's 3 things you can do. I almost put up 4 fingers. 3 things you can do. 1, download the app Calm. There's a bajillion guided meditations for beginners. 2, download the app Headspace. There's a bajillion meditations for beginners. 3, go to YouTube and type in guided meditation for beginners. You guys have access to all the education you need to be a better you. People just constantly make excuses that they can't do it. All this shit is free, by the way. Literally. So you have no excuse to not do it. And if you need to be convinced further, there are, I think, upwards of 200 maybe? I think there's upwards of 200 scientific studies done proving that meditation changes the brain chemistry. Meditation literally cures anxiety and depression, but it has to be a habit. It's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym one time and expect to squat 225. It just doesn't work that way. You have to make it a routine. All right. Same thing with journaling. If you're like, I don't have time to sit down and write, that's not a good excuse. Open the voice memo app of your phone while you're driving and talk to it. Vent out loud. That is a form of journaling. Okay. Also, the excuse, I am not sure what to write about. Bullshit. Sit down with a blank piece of paper with no distractions, no noise, no music. And I first want you to write down 5 to 10 things you're grateful for. Being in a state of gratitude helps you manifest your desires. 5 to 10 things you're grateful for, and then whatever's on your mind. I want you to sit in silence and observe your thoughts. What's there? What's coming up? What's stressing you out? Write it on paper. Okay, great. Breath work. Guys, breath work is somatically, it's the only way to regulate your nervous system. Okay? All of you guys have a dysregulated as fuck nervous system. I don't even need to talk to you to know. I know you do. Okay? If you are living in a chronically stressed out state, you think you're going to attract something good into your life? No. Okay? You need to be doing breath work. We don't need to complicate it. I mean, if you want to eventually, join a program that teaches breath work, great. But we don't need to complicate it in the beginning stages. You could literally just start with 10 minutes of deep breathing every single day. In through the nose, out through the mouth, 10 minutes of that. Or go to YouTube and type in breathwork guide for beginners. It's so easy and free. And again, this ties into central nervous system regulation. There's a ton of tools that I will not go into today, but if you literally go to YouTube or Google and type in CNS regulation tools, a bajillion things will pop up. There's bilateral stimulation, bilateral music, there's tapping, there's grounding, there's EFT. There's so many things you can use that are free resources, but you guys have to regulate yourself, dude, especially if you have a high stress life. You're constantly go, 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 go. I bet you're always burnt out and tired and stressed and annoyed and irritated. No shit. You have to regulate your nervous system. Grounding is another powerful tool. And I don't want to hear anyone's excuse of it's cold outside. You better go get in that snow. You will be okay. Actually, the cold is a beautiful shock to your nervous system. Grounding looks like sitting in nature, right? Taking your shoes and socks off, just putting your feet in the grass or the ground, the dirt, the sand, the ocean, wherever you're at. Grounding is a very powerful tool of regulation because it connects us to the earth, and it's extremely regulating for the nervous system. CTFAR, I don't think I've actually taught this one in this community, so I put it an example on the next slide that I'm going to go over. So I'm not going to dive into that right now. This last one, these last couple are just a couple of that I have kind of come up with my own over my journey, and they've become very powerful. So the next time your thoughts start to spiral, let's say something happens in your reality that triggers you, right? And you go down this negative thought spiral. Oh my God, the world's gonna end. Oh my God, I'm gonna be broke. Oh my God, I'm gonna die alone. Oh, I'm gonna be single forever. Oh my God, like just doom and gloom thoughts, right? Stop for a second and just ask yourself, is this true though? Like this crazy thought I'm having in my head, is it actually true? And in order for it to be true, you have to have factual evidence that could be upheld in a court of law. Is this true? 9 times out of 10, the answer is gonna be no, it's not. I'm just creating scenarios in my head. Cool. Now you've taken this, oh my God, to Oh, actually, it's fine. Okay, try it out. This next one, I need to trademark this term before someone steals it from me. Anyways, I came up with this. It's called future scarcity obsession. Okay, future scarcity obsession is when we are thinking about a scenario in the future that 9 times out of 10 most likely will never happen, but we're letting it stress us the fuck out and dysregulate us. Let's say a scenario, your hours get cut at work, right? And you start having all these crazy thoughts. Oh my God, I'm gonna go broke. I'm gonna run out of money. What am I gonna do in like 3 months when I run out of my savings? And it's like, yo, your hours just got cut. Like, let's chill out. But in those situations, what I want you to ask yourself is, what if that did happen? What if I did go broke? What if I did run out of money? Then what happens? What I want you guys to see in these situations is 9 times out of 10, what's happening in our nervous system when we freak out over future scarcity obsession, it's correlating this stress response to danger. Stress response to danger. The body physiologically does not know it's 2024. The body thinks it's 2,000 years ago and you're running from a fucking bear. Okay? That's what the body thinks when you freak out. So you have to calm the body down and say, if it did happen, we wouldn't die. We wouldn't be in danger. We just might have to go live with our mom and start over. Oh, okay. Whatever. Could be worse. You see my point? We're not trying to make everything sound pretty. We're trying to take a dysregulated state down to regulation because your body physiologically thinks the world's about to end. And you have to calm. It's your job to regulate yourself, guys. And most people don't do that shit. Yep, play it all out. Play the whole situation out in your head, how it would happen, how it would go, how you would have to start over. What would happen if you started over? Like, oh, I could actually get back to this point. This might take me some time. Perfect. Then you're fine. Last thing, I think it's very obvious, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Routine. Guys, you can't meditate once a week, journal once a month, and then get pissed in 2 months when nothing has changed. That's like tracking your food once a week, going to the gym once a week, and then expecting results. The fuck? That's not gonna work. You need routine to succeed. I made it rhyme so that it sticks in your head. You need routine to succeed. Okay? Use these tools every single day. And I don't mean use all of them every day. I mean, just you can alternate them if that's easier for you. Maybe tomorrow you meditate for 10 minutes, and the day after that you journal a page or a half, right? And then maybe the day after that you just do like 10 minutes of breath work. But you have to do something to regulate this and this. If you don't, I promise you will stay stuck. I promise. And I don't want that for you. Okay, so this is the CPFAR model I was talking about. So when you get triggered in your external reality and you're having a fucking meltdown, I want you to go through this model. I recommend just taking a picture of this really quickly. The letters stand for, so C, circumstance, P, thought, F, feeling, A, action, R, result. Okay? You're gonna go through this model and write everything down so that you can see what's actually going on inside your brain and that you're actually fine. Okay? Here's an example. Let's say the circumstance is, by the way, the circumstance has to be a fact. It can't be, well, I feel this way. No. The circumstance has to be a fact. Okay? Your partner had a busy and exhausting week at work and has been very quiet and distant today at home. Valid? Sure, all of you have experienced that in some capacity, right? Now, what is your thought about this circumstance? Okay, well, my thought is, well, he doesn't want to be bothered with me, so I must have done something wrong, right? We're triggered. We take it personally when it's not really about us. So what feeling do you get from having that thought? Well, I feel sadness and abandonment when I have that thought. Okay, cool. What action do you take because of that feeling? Well, since I feel sadness and abandonment, I'm going to create more distance. I'm going to avoid him since they don't want to be bothered with me anyways, right? So what's the result of that action you're taking? You guys don't speak for the rest of the night or the following morning, and then you start a fight. You see what just happened there? Circumstances don't make us feel. Notice the order of this. The shit that happens in your external reality, that doesn't make you feel. The thoughts you have around it make you feel. So when you write this whole model out, you're like, oh my God, we had a fight because I took this personally when it had nothing to do with me. The right way to handle this would have been to go to your partner and say, hey babe, I see you're exhausted and kind of burnt out from the week. I'm going to give you your space, but is there anything I can do to, help out a little bit? situation would have gone totally differently because you didn't make the circumstance about you. Trauma response. This is called being triggered and projecting onto someone else, okay? Use this model. It's great. It can stop fights and save relationships. All right. I just want to give you guys a couple of resources. All of these can be found on Audible. If you're not a book person, I'm personally not a book person. I have to listen to everything I read. A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Gikandi. It goes over how to attract success and wealth in your life from a science level. All the woo-woo shit and spiritual stuff you guys see on the internet, it's directly connected to science. This is quantum physics, by the way. I'm not making this shit up. This is quantum physics. David will explain quantum physics to you so that you can retract what you actually want in your reality, okay? Read it. It's a great book. Existential Kink is the one I was talking about earlier that will make your brain make sense to you. She's a PhD, in case you want to question it, okay? It's going to show you how the poor habits that you have and the things that you say you don't want, subconsciously, you desire them. And that's why you're stuck in this reality you're in right now that you don't like. It's because secretly you like it. Hence, existential kink. Okay. The third one, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. This will just, everything that I said here about the subconscious mind, it will make everything make sense. It explains to you how your subconscious mind is responsible for everything in your reality. And it gives you the science behind it so that your brain will hear it and say, oh, okay, that makes more sense. He can explain it much better than I can. And then the last one is a pretty common one, guys. But if you haven't read it, I'm not sure what you're doing with your life. Dr. Joe is the shit, but it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. This is a little bit of a longer one, but this is going to absolutely blow your mind. The first time I heard it, I was like, holy shit, I make so much sense now. Okay. Basically, you can have whatever you want in this life. And if you don't believe that, it's because you haven't read this book yet. So yeah, you want to be rich and wealthy. You want to make $250,000 a year. You want to have a partner that's obsessed with you but respects you. You want to have the body of your dreams. You can literally have all of that. Okay. But you have to get in control of this and this first. Books are so powerful. If you're going to overlook this slide, books are extremely powerful because the things that you don't know, someone already wrote a book on. You could just constantly read books, powerful ones, and never go to college and be smarter than anyone out there with a bachelor's degree. Go fucking read, guys. These books alone will change your life. All right. How we feeling? Questions, thoughts, concerns, all the things. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I will answer your question.
Can you get a dopamine hit from the stress response that you were talking about earlier? You know how people are in chronic stress and they get addicted to it?
Yes, it's a dopamine hit. Yep. That's why they stay looped for so long. It's like the same concept with drug addicts.
Interesting.
I missed the first half of this, and all I got was the end with resources, which is great because that's what I need right now. But I feel like from our call on Monday, all of this is directed to me. I know it's not for me, but like I needed that. You know what I mean?
I know, Jazz. I knew you'd get a lot out of it. But no, I promise I wrote this presentation 2 weeks ago, so it's not about you. But yes, a lot of what we talked about on our call, yep, it's because it's the same shit, dude. It's all science.
Yeah. No, I see that. Thank you.